The manosphere has more in common with misandry than it does misogyny. I was thinking about this for the first time the other day. I'll say that one more time, by the way. The modern narrative around the manosphere, right? The narrative, the manosphere itself espouses. It has more consistency in its message with misandry than it does with misogyny. The manosphere is misandrist and misogynist in its disposition. Men who hate men use misogyny, right? The OnlyFans agencies, the cam girl operations, the exploitative content farms as the delivery mechanism. All of these things attack men. Can you honestly say that all the aforementioned things have quantifiably made your life better or worse? The answer is no. The financial extraction runs the other direction. You can think of the women in these operations as the inputs and the men consuming the content as the product. And the entire ecosystem only works if the men consuming it never learn to control themselves. That's right, the manosphere actually preys on individuals who already have negligible control over their impulses. And they take advantage of your very propensity to procreate by diluting the online media and landscape with adult material, pornography, horrible stuff. You know, once you see this inversion, the figures in this space stop looking like the role models that they are and start looking like the self-consuming narcissists that they are. And their profitable target becomes abundantly clear, which sadly is us, is men. Look, the mechanism is very straightforward. Men consume exploitative female content, develop that dopamine downregulation and disordered mating expectations, right? It does affect your brain this way. This literally changes your structure. Both of those make them less competitive in the actual dating market, what you actually want, like a wife. The free product they push, you know, does not make you more valuable in the eyes of the women that you actually want to attract. It makes you less valuable in the eyes of your future wife. She's not going to think, oh my God, I'm so glad he's consumed hedonistic material. Ultimately, from the hand of some of the creators that he fawns over, that broccoli-haired twit, Jack Doherty, I think his name is. Less competitive men consume more content. They follow more gurus, right? And they buy more into this pseudo-life fantasy. The weaker you become, the more you spend. The industry does not profit from your strength. Remember, it profits from your collapse. This is why the manosphere's most prominent figures sell the fantasy first, and then the discipline as a kind of like under-the-table thing, if at all, by the way, because a man who learns to genuinely control stops consuming. A man who learns to compete in the real dating market stops scrolling. A man who develops his own taste, his own life, stops buying in, access into somebody else's. The actual improvement you make is a unit of the revenue lost to the machine. This works because the men running it, of course, are biologically selected for it. Of course they are. They have those dark triad traits which are intriguing and very marketable. The psychopathy, the narcissism, the low compassion for human beings. But think about that, really. Psychopathy, narcissism, low compassion for human beings. Those virtuous traits that your son or daughter would value in a father, that your wife would value in a husband, that greater society would value if we're going to stop all this petty religious psychological warfare. The men who reach the top of this industry are the same men temperamentally suited to extracting from it. The two are the same set. Yeah. I mean, this is a really interesting area to kind of muse over objectively because I understand the allure. I understand the allure of being a very, very competent individual, scarily competent, to the point where, you're 0.01% in your particular industry. You're one of a kind, you're rare, you're dangerous. And a lot of the men hearing those words gravitate to that. Even I, as I'm saying this, I'm getting goosebumps. Oh, I want to be that dangerous. I want to be that one of a kind being. Just don't get lost to the idea of things, man. That's one thing I will say. Do not get lost into the idea of things, because on the surface, these things seem shiny, but there's no depth, there's no substance there's a void, a black hole underneath them. Maybe you're listening to this and you were born with those traits, by the way, Because they're real. They're out there. Psychopathy, narcissism, and you can't help it. Maybe that's your karma. Maybe that's the cards you've been given, the dice you've got to roll. But percentage-wise, it's more likely that you are a compassionate and empathic human being listening to this video, and you're finding the very idea of stepping on your fellow brother to advance your own cause pretty repugnant, disloyal and unbecoming of the greatest version of yourself, I will say. I mean, think about this. They are not misogynists who happen to harm men. They are misandrists who use misogyny as a kind of delivery mechanism. The harm to women is equally real. I'm not going to go into a diatribe about this because anybody with a 3-digit IQ can click on a video from one of your fellow fresh and fit creators and understand that these individuals are low IQ, they're delusional, they're hypocritical, and they have a net negative impact on all men and greater society. Sorry, I had to say it. You have to exercise critical thought here, gentlemen. I get it. I feel the pull, the cars, the attention, the head turn effect is real. The fantasy of driving around in something loud and aesthetically pleasing with somebody equally loud and aesthetically pleasing in the passenger seat who serves as mere visual candy, right? And this is the real funny thing. The only people that you're really impressing are uninformed 14-year-old boys. That's no grown man who respects you would actually be interested in those kinds of things. They don't respect that. They don't respect cheap thrills. Competent, high IQ, moralistic individuals understand the inflated value of something like that. And I'm sure you've sat with this fantasy, which is why the mechanism matters more than the moralism of it, right? Anyone with a morsel of self-respect can see that the men selling you their fantasy got their cars and the attention and traded their souls for both, to get them. That's not the argument, though. The argument is what they need you to be in order to keep affording that kind of pseudo-fantasy. And for more to arise, by the way, because there are more of them coming up. I've spent most of my early 20s struggling with lust and the dopamine economy that feeds it. I understand the pull. I'm not lecturing at you from a hill. I'm telling you what I see now that I'm no longer inside it. Is maybe a fairly good way to put it, right? Andrew Tate built his name infamously on camgirl operations and casinos. That's public record, by the way. He has a tweet on record from his early career stating in essence that he ran a business that exploited men and women for profit. He has not retracted that. Many of you will tell me that he has apologized, that he is sorry, that we live in a culture of forgiveness and second chances. I'm a spiritual man. I can forgive. But I'm a rational man, so I don't forget. The two are not the same operation. I can forgive you and wish you peace and get on with your new life, but that doesn't mean that I can give you my trust again. Forgiveness does not necessarily mean that you get access to trust. It means that I have no ill feelings towards you, right? And by the way, I've made my mistakes, gentlemen. This is an important thing to say. I've made mistakes. I've been addicted to drugs. I've been addicted to pleasure. I've even stolen some things before, but I've never intentionally done anything malicious towards anybody and then bragged about it without an ounce of, shame. That's why you cannot inherently trust individuals who market dark triad traits, because they are void of compassion. They do not have the capacity to even feel for you in that way. He is the most prominent example of that. He's not the only one, by the way. There are, the largest OnlyFans agency operators are seemingly all on YouTube now. The men who built audiences of teenage boys and then quietly pivoted to managing women those boys were consuming would happily watch their followers go bankrupt for one more chain, I'm sure. It's not survival. It's not keeping the lights on. It's greed, running a business model masquerading as masculinity. You are being used. We are being used. We are being extracted from, and I'm tired of these individuals being celebrated. And I do notice the irony of making a video on it too, gentlemen. The word misogynist describes a hatred of women. The word misandrist describes the contempt for men. The figures running in the space are misandrist first. They use misogynistic tools to produce misogynistic effects. The women in their operations are exploited. The men consuming those operations are dismantled. The dismantlement is the product. They do not need you to be strong. They need you to be predictable. You know, a man who is controlled by his impulses is forecastable. A forecastable man is a monetizable man. The entire ecosystem, the cars, the gurus, the agencies, the content, the lifestyle fantasy, the algorithmic feed designed to keep you in low-grade arousal indefinitely only works if you stay weak enough to keep buying into it. So the strategy is straightforward. Become unpredictable. Become unconsumable. Yeah? Have agency. Have pure personal jurisdiction. You know, the men running this industry are not afraid of your anger, are afraid of your discipline. That's the currency they cannot extract from you. And it is the only one that you need that will win this war. That's why I speak almost ad nauseum on every single video regarding interoceptic, this is a long video, apologies, practices, meditation, breath work. Why? Because they strengthen your discipline muscle. I have nothing to sell you other than your own personal agency. I have only to sell you a system that I'm only loyal to a system that guarantees you results. That's what I say to my clients all the time. Meditate, breathe, strengthen that discipline muscle. That's my only message. And if you subscribe to that, you can subscribe to me. These are facts, no theories. Speak soon.